What's going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back today with a new card show recap. This was the Midwest Monster 2 Electric Boogaloo taking place in Fishers, Indiana on Friday and Saturday of this weekend when this video is being uploaded. And it wasn't as crazy as the first one. Let's just make that clear. The first one had a lot of hype around it. This one did too. The foot traffic was significantly lighter than before. And there's a lot of reasons why that could be. I heard pretty much any theory that you could think of over the weekend, just overhearing conversations. And from what I could gather, though, for a lot of dealers, it wasn't what they were hoping to get out of it. But for the show, the people who came there came to play. There were people that were willing to spend and willing to buy, sell trades. So, I mean, I've always said this is that would you rather have a show of 100 people who are just there to look around, or would you rather have a show with 10 people who are actively engaged in buying and interacting with dealers and that kind of stuff? So it's one of those, I guess, questions. Do you want a higher attended show or do you want a more quality attended show? Not that there's anything wrong with just looking around, but at the end of the day, people are there to buy, sell trades. So that's that's what it comes down to in my eyes. In addition to having fun, of course. But let me show you what I picked up. So this was a 2-day show, and I'm not going to go through my value box pickups aside from one. This was kind of the highlight. I have a small stack, probably, I don't know, 100 to 150 cards that came from like quarter and dollar boxes, and there's some quality stuff. This was probably the best find, I guess you could say, where this was in a quarter box. Nasty Nestor, rookie from 2020, Topps Chrome Sapphire update. Will be like a $15, $20 card. So nice little find there. But other than that, just some solid quality stuff. And then outside of that, on day one, I actually had a lot more sales than I did buying. And I was not set up at this show. I was walking around. It's been ever since I bought that Zion case that a lot of people have been stopping me and asking me if they can take a look at my stuff. And some dealers admitted to me that they purposely seek out people who have these cases or people who they just feel would be, I don't know, that they can get a deal done with or something. I was talking with my friend Ed Westergriff about this too, and we kind of went back and forth and just shared our thoughts on it and kind of compared notes to what we've been seeing at other shows, and that's been his observation as well. So if that's the thing that you've been seeing, like a lot of the Pelican case guys out there being like targeted by dealers, I'd love to hear it. Or if you yourself have been like that, then let me know. But you guys are here to see cards, right? You want to see what I picked up. So this was the first pickup. I actually only have 2 raw cards that were not in value boxes that I'm going to show off today. And that's just because I've been getting burned a lot recently, whether it's on Whatnot or buying online or buying at shows with cards where the condition issues are not disclosed at the time of the sale. And I want to feel that they are done, that it's not done maliciously or that no one's trying to pull a fast one. Well, how often it happens, I wonder sometimes, are people trying to get one over on someone, or I don't know. It's a little disheartening, but just adjust my what I'm looking for accordingly. And it's on me sometimes too with not carefully enough reviewing the cards before I purchase them. I do take accountability for that, but this one here was just too good of a price to pass up. $10 on the Spencer Strider rainbow foil here. Probably, I would guess the front runner for NL Rookie of the Year. It's probably one of the Braves rookies. The Braves might just dominate the entire ballot. So I guess we'll see on that. And then this one is not for me. This is for my buddy Saul BD Kane 721 here on YouTube. And if you guys are familiar with him, you'll know that he does these Topps Chrome parallel sets every year. This year he's going after this magenta speckle set. So if you do come across any of these in your journeys at card shows, if maybe you open up a box and you pull one out, hit him up because he might need it for a set. So I know I've contributed. This will be the 3rd one I've contributed towards the set so far. So I'm happy that I was able to knock a few off his list, including probably one of the more substantial ones on the veteran side of the checklist, and Aaron Judge. These are numbered to 350. And as soon as I saw this one, I'm like, I don't know if he has this one for sure, but it is a Judge card. He's probably the hottest name right now in the hobby baseball wise. So I'm going to go ahead and scoop that one up just in case. It turns out he didn't have it, but that is going to him. So I was happy to work out that deal for him. And on day one, it was just the Yankees day for me. That's really the only way that I can put it. So I made one trade where I also got cash, and then I also made one purchase. I'll show you the purchase first. It is a 1963 Jello Mickey Mantle. Now, on these Jello post-serial type of cards where they are hand cut, most often you're going to see them with an authentic grade, and it goes for any reputable third-party grading service. They're going to just label it as authentic. So whenever I see a numerical grade assigned, it does catch my eye. And I do like to take a very good look at it and wonder, was this maybe an oversight? Should this qualify for that grade? And this one here, it looked pretty solid. So being in a 4, it's a pretty good grade for this particular card. And the dealer had it at a reasonable price. I was able to talk him down a little bit, and I got this for a number that I was satisfied with, one that I probably won't be in a rush to move. Of course, every single time I say that, usually someone inquires about it very quickly, and it's gone within a couple of days. So who knows? But it's one of those that I don't mind having. It was one that really jumped out to me, and really didn't find too much on day one that was jumping out. And I'll talk about that in the later segments of today's episode. Like I said, it was a Yankee type of day. There was a Judge, there was a Mantle, and then there was this one, the 2010 Exquisite Collection, final year that Upper Deck had the baseball license. Diamond Club signatures of Derek Jeter, numbered to 130. It's a BGS 8.5 true grade, if that is your thing, with 8.5 corners and edges. Really, if you bought one of these raw, I would expect the edges and corners to look like this. So, I mean, it's just nice to know that it's not incredibly dinged up. And a grade on a card like this, unless it's something that's what I like to call a unicorn grade, where it's like a 10 or something, which doesn't happen too often. It is just nice in general to have an idea of what you're getting yourself into. But you could cover this up, and cover this part up. As long as I know that the card is authentic, the signature is authentic, it's really all I care about when looking for stuff like this. So this was put out in a showcase. I thought it was very reasonably priced. I gave up a couple of things that I wasn't too attached to. One of them was my Shohei Otani Leaf autograph. Again, it's a sticker auto of Otani. It was my first Otani autograph, but it was a lower end one. It was meant to be something that I could acquire and put out for someone who was looking for an Otani autograph with minimal damage to their wallet. I would say not breaking the bank, but that's very difficult to do with his signatures right now. So I was able to get the captain, and you can never go wrong with a Jeter autograph. I've only had, this might actually be my first Jeter autograph. I can't remember a number. I feel like I've had one before, but it's eluding me right now. So if this is my first Jeter autograph, that's a bonus that I kind of forgot about. So that was a cool one there. These were also on day one. And like I said, those were the only, the Judge and the Mantle were the only two cards that I picked up that were over $20. The Jeter, of course, is as well, but that was in a trade where I got cash. So me having to actually spend $20 or more on a single card only on those two, which was when I'm going to these larger shows where I have to stay the night at a hotel, I typically try to go after some bigger stuff or try to buy some bulk deals to make it worth the trip and just taking those overhead costs into account. So as much as I love digging through the value boxes, I definitely have a lot more motivation and incentive to go out there and try to make some larger deals happen. But I saw something that I couldn't resist looking through because it's something that I haven't seen since before I was a dealer. Something that I probably haven't seen since 2018, and that is a 5 slab box. Now, I have seen some value slab boxes before, but typically they are with third-party grading companies where it's your first time ever hearing of them. Some very strange slabs from a different dimension. But there were actually PSA and SGC slabs in there, not just SGC slabs with the old 100-point grading scale. I do see those in there in these value slab boxes from time to time. They were actually newer SGC slabs. It piqued my curiosity, and I picked out 4 cards to build a stack. And I mean, I was just really happy with these for $5. I can't say I've seen a $5 slab box in a long time, but first one up. This one will just because I'm living in the Cincinnati area, it's one I had to bring back to probably where it belongs. Carson Palmer rookie for 2003 Ultra in a 10, nonetheless. And then this is I think 471 would qualify as a high number. It's at least a semi-high number on 59. I forget where the cutoff is that year. This is just a beautifully centered 59 card, and I get that it's not a Hall of Famer. It's not really it's a solid player in Tom Sturdivant, I believe is how you pronounce it. Is it a crazy expensive card? No, but it's just a beautiful example. Like I would buy this card if I was building a 59 set for $5 raw, just because of how nice it is in general, and you get it slabbed up too. It's just a beautiful looking card. Here's what I would guess would be a future Hall of Fame rookie in Kurt Schilling, 89 Donruss and a 9. I mean, why not for $5? And 82 Fleer, Ozzie Smith at a 7. Just sure, why not? Hall of Famer playing day cards for $5. I will gladly jump on those if they are, if they look nice. So that was pretty much it for day one. I did go to trade night. I picked up 2 cards, one of which I was able to parlay into a trade the following day, so I can't show it off, but I will talk about it in a moment. This was the other card I picked up at trade night, and this is just a beautiful example of this one. 1959 Topps Aaron Clubs World Series Homer. Beautiful 6 here, very well centered. I was talking about this with the guy who I traded with, and he was able to teach me about some things. And I don't want to say I taught him about vintage or anything, but we exchanged knowledge. Let me put it that way. So PSA has a particular disdain for what we call fish eyes. There are these little print defects that look like fish eyes. You can see there's one down there on the ER. And then there is one there in the S in Baseball Thrills. And for these really will dock your grade. And to me, they are ideal. I don't particularly like them. I think they're a bit distracting. But if they're small like these ones and they kind of don't, they don't look too out of place here, and it brings the grade down, these are the types of vintage cards that I will go after. And I was telling this guy why I liked this particular card, and he was telling me that he liked the center, and I'm like, yeah, I absolutely agree. In exchange, he taught me a little bit about soccer, which was funny because I was talking with Eric those back pages about the show before I went to trade night, and he was asking me a little bit about soccer, and I told him that I didn't look hard enough at the soccer, and I told him I'm going to do better. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to look at the soccer a bit more. And yeah, then sure enough, I run into a guy who knew a lot about it, and I ran into him a couple of times on day 2. So that was cool, and glad that we were able to work out a deal on that one. Speaking of vintage, on day 2, I made a nice little stack of vintage here that I picked up. One of these cards was, again, traded away with my other trade night pickup, so I won't be able to show that off. But I did find this one here. It's a 65 Topps Lou Brock and a CSG 5.5. A pretty solid grade for this card. This is a high number at 540, and it's pretty cheap, all things considered. Would I pay the same for a CSG slab as a PSA slab? No, I wouldn't. Does that make much sense to a lot of people? No, it doesn't. In terms of being a collector, it doesn't make it makes some sense to me. That's a whole different discussion. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But when I saw this card, I'm like, you know what? This I'm going to go for it. I think it has a little bit of a scratch or a crack in the slab there, which is a little unfortunate. I don't mind that too much. It's just a little light one. It doesn't affect the card, but was able to use that as a way to get it for a cheaper price. So I'm extremely happy with what I was able to obtain that one for. This next stack was a 5-card bundle. The primary card, I guess you could say, in the bundle in terms of the most expensive one was a Joe Morgan rookie and a PSA. It was either a 5 or a 6. I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was a 6, but it could have been a 5. And I was able to get that with these 4 cards for what I thought was a very solid deal. And I was happy with myself for making these types of bulk deals because it's something that I need to do more of. Sometimes I get a little bit fixated on one particular card and just try to go after one card. And I close myself off from other cards that the dealer may have that I may also like. So I'm trying to do better with that. And I was proud of myself for really sticking to that and making this deal because I got some really beautiful cards in my opinion. But in addition to the Morgan, I got a, once again, 74 Topps Lou Brock. Unintentional that I picked up 2 Lou Brock cards. That's just kind of how it went. Centering on this one's pretty good. I'm a centering guy. A couple of fish eyes on it. And again, they're not too distracting. So that one jumped out to me. Really do like this one here. 59 Stan Musial and a good 2.5. I'm not going to pretend that this has razor sharp corners, but it has minimal snowing on his face. That's one of the big things I look for with 59. The biggest issue is typically centering. This one is pretty good, better than most 59s that I saw at the show for any player. And the snowing on this one isn't too bad. So at a 2.5, how much can you really expect to get out of a card? But in this case, this is one that was just a really solid, beautiful example of that card. Shout out to Don's Field of Dreams on that one. I'm going to save this one for last because it's my favorite one of the bundle. How about the Mick 65 Topps? This is the second one of these that I've picked up in the last few months or so. And this one doesn't look nearly as nice as the PSA 3 that I had picked up at the Columbus show back over the summer. But it's a 1, and for a 1, it's not too bad. Is it above average 1? Maybe slightly above average. It's not all, there's some creases in it, of course, but there's none over his face. There's none on his actual body. It's not great centering. You're not going to usually find too many of these that have great centering. But it looks like what a card from 1965 looks like when I think of it in my head. It's been well loved, and it's Mickey Mantle. So I can't go wrong picking up a Mick. It was a very reasonable price for a Mantle, which very seldom does that happen. So the last one here, this is a beauty. 1963 Topps Frank Robinson. One of the most underrated players of all time. Not perfect centering, but some of the best centering I have seen on a 63 Topps. It's a little bit more on the right side, but it's usually a lot worse than that. It's got some snowing here in the background. You can kind of see that. It looks like it's almost like dust, but none of it's on his face itself. The corners on this card are just incredible for a 63. One of my knocks on the 63 design, as colorful and as vibrant as it is that these bottom corners down here, when they get dinged up, it is really noticeable. And that really speaks true to any non-standard 4 white border square cards, is that when you introduce different colors and different patterns, it can really distract if there are certain condition issues. With this one here, what a beautiful example of this card. So I saw this one, and I mean, it was already reasonably priced, and if nothing else, I was going to buy this one for sure. I would have even paid full sticker just if I couldn't have negotiated it down any. I was just that impressed with that card. All right, so for the rest of day 2, I've only got a few more cards to show off here. I bought a stack of 10 slabs towards the end of the day. They are all the same card, and it is, for this particular genre of the hobby, it's the equivalent of the Zion-based Prism card, I would say. And when you see this, there's going to be a record scratch because most of you are not going to expect what you're about to see. But I bought 10 of these 2020 Pokemon Sword and Shield Black Star promo, Champion's Path, Charizard v PSA 10. I looked at the population reports on these, and it was very shocking. I knew that this was a popular card, and these promos, they typically grade out pretty well. And they're not rare at all. They're very common since every one of the trainer boxes has one of these. At least that's my understanding of it. And I think the population on these is like over 36,000 or something absolutely insane. So is it easy to find these? Yes. And I wouldn't buy a single one of these. That's why I bought a stack of 10. But they do move fairly quickly, and I got a bulk deal on them where I felt like I could make a little bit on them. I think it's a cool card, but yeah, definitely out of place for me to be buying Pokemon. One of the two cards that I picked up at trade night that I can't show you because it's gone already is a Snorlax. I did post a picture of it on my Twitter. It's like a full art Snorlax. And with Pokemon, it's something that I would like to get more into. I don't want to go on a rant about it now because I'm already 22 minutes in and I'm still showing off what I picked up. But I would really like to do a video sometime talking about why I am interested in it now, especially since a lot of the hype has died down, or at least it's not just all hype right now. I certainly have a long ways to go in my journey as a learner of Pokemon, but I hope to get there. So we'll see, little bit by little. All right, so speaking of Pokemon and that Snorlax card. So I ended up trading that and the Joe Morgan rookie to get this. This was towards the end of day 2. It is a 2020 impeccable Luka Doncic Stainless Stars Gold. This is from a box that is what, like $1,800 a box or something to open up, something absolutely insane. And these metal cards are extremely tough to grade out. Just metal cards in general, if you've graded printing plates or anything like that before, you'll know that they are prone to scratching fairly easily. And you gotta take really good care of them. Even with the protective covers, the coating that they put on them, sometimes it's not enough to protect them. This one here, I feel like there's some scuffing on the slab, and that's just part of getting these metal cards. I have that Mahomes from Elements. They just don't really work well with the plastic. Even when it's in a baggie right now, which is probably for the best because otherwise it might actually damage the card. But when I saw this in a 9, I thought that seems weird. And it was priced, I'll just tell you, it had a sticker price of $300. And what I was into the Morgan and the Snorlax for was less than that. And I was just, did I give up more than what that sticker price was? Yes, absolutely. But I was the one approaching the dealer on this occasion. So I'm more than willing to give up something. I'm not going to be someone who, I don't make it the dealer's problem for me to come out ahead on a deal. But when I saw this one, I'm like, that seems insanely cheap. Is it insanely cheap? I guess we'll find out if I end up moving it. And how much it goes for, but it was just too good to pass up in my opinion. I picked up this one as well, Donovan Mitchell, who is one of the hottest basketball names in my area for shows. I am in Ohio, so there is a lot of Cavaliers supporters around here, and there is more buzz around the Cavs right now than there has been since LeBron left. That's typically how it goes, is that there's a lot of buzz when LeBron is here, and then there's a lot of buzz that goes elsewhere when LeBron moves away. So, but now that they have a core with Mitchell and Garland and Okoro and Mobley, it's a team that, especially in a weaker Eastern Conference, could make some noise. I'm not ready to say that they're title contenders by any means, but they have a very solid core roster and a very young team. So I think Cleveland has done well. As much as that pains me to say as a Pistons fan, but you guys know I love my Revolution cards. This is a lava number to 10, and I mean, it was just too cheap to pass up. So I went ahead and grabbed it. Last deal of the day was from my buddy Brian, and I always love talking with Brian. He bought some cards off of me twice, actually, throughout the period of the show, and just a fantastic guy. He watches the videos too. So Brian, thank you again for your friendship and for another fantastic weekend at this show and teaching me about Pokemon. He was the one who got me into it and coached me through my first Pokemon card purchase with the Snorlax on trade night. But the last card I picked up was from him. It is this Jokic SGC 1010 MVP Contenders auto. And I like Jokic. Big men typically don't get a lot of love in the hobby, but I thought this one was worth taking a flyer on, and I don't mind having a Jokic autograph if worse comes to shove or push comes to shove. Multi-time MVP now, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he's won it back-to-back years. Apologies for my lapse in basketball knowledge. I've tried to learn more over the past few years as I've gotten more into it. Once again, I really haven't followed basketball as hardcore since the going to work Pistons, so I have a lot of thing to catch up on. I've been more so a casual fan, but pretty much since the Pistons acquired Blake Griffin, I got back into it a bit more. So learning little by little, but I know that this guy is one that you can't go wrong with, right? So finally, that was all my pickups. I went longer than I thought this video was going to, but hey, it is what it is. So let me tell you a bit more about the show floor review. We'll talk about what was hot and what was not right after that. But it was a very diverse show floor. There was a pretty decent soccer presence. This show typically, well, any Indiana show typically leans heavy on basketball. And then there is a lot of cult stuff for football. Baseball is certainly on the back burner compared to those two, but there was a very healthy amount of baseball, especially Aaron Judge, as you can imagine. There was a good amount of soccer. There was actually a really good amount of wrestling and a lot of interest in the wrestling as well out there. Not as much on the UFC. That was probably one of the areas where I was surprised how little UFC there was, because it has had a substantially growing following. So I don't know what can be attributed to that, but I feel like there was more hockey than there was UFC, which is something that typically doesn't happen. Overall, though, very diverse show floor. And then the non-sports stuff, too, had a good presence. There was more Marvel stuff that I'm used to seeing. There was certainly a lot of Pokemon there. There was actually some Magic the Gathering stuff, which is different. Typically with like the TCG stuff, you're going to see a lot of Pokemon. So, yeah. What was hot, what was not? This was the first time that it wasn't all about the quarterbacks. I didn't hear too many people talking about Josh Allen. In fact, there wasn't as many Josh Allen cards even out on the show floor, which, taking mental inventory, surprised me a little bit. It seems like there wasn't as much Josh Allen. There wasn't as much Joe Burrow. There certainly was not very much Tua. I think a lot of people have gotten scared and don't want to sell their Tua stuff, which is understandable. Right now, the ones I saw a lot of, there was a ton of Mac Jones. I saw more Mac Jones than any of the other 2021 quarterbacks out there. Probably number 2 was Zach Wilson. Not too much Trey Lance out there. Outside of that, there was Justin Herbert was one of the hottest names. And there were so many Justin Herbert cards that it almost felt like I was Herbert fatigued by how many of them. And I typically don't look for Herbert stuff because it's expensive. I can move it, but at the price that I have to get into it at, it's usually not worth trying to negotiate on it because everybody wants it. I don't have it. I'd rather try to make something else happen with it. So a lot of interest in Justin Herbert. Baseball-wise, Judge was the mainstay. Also, a lot of love for Shohei Otani. He hasn't had as many people talking about him in recent shows, but there were a lot of people who were interested in him. And then with the MLB wildcard round going on during this show, there were a lot of people who were interested in some of the playoff teams. So there was some interest in some Guardians stuff, actually, which was a bit interesting. Definitely a lot of Braves guys out there. There was a lot of Phillies guys there at the show. So very wide interest in baseball, particularly for an Indiana show. Tell you what was not hot again, those usual suspects, not as much going on there. And then basketball wise, it was a little bit of both. It was hot, so there was a lot of people trying to buy with the preseason starting up in anticipation for the upcoming season. But it's not nearly as hyped up as football was, where everyone was competing for all the quarterbacks during the NFL preseason. The NBA one has been much more tame. The biggest name that I heard was Anthony Edwards, but there was not a lot of people asking about LaMelo Ball, not a lot of people asking about really any of the 2021 rookie class. Jalen Green, there were Jalen Green cards out there, but not too many people seem to be interested in them. Same with Evan Mobley. He was probably the most people were interested in, but very little talk around Cade Cunningham, very little talk around Jonathan Kuminga, very little talk around Franz Wagner. And I get it, some of those guys, maybe they're not as hot as like a Trae Young or a Luka or a Zion or a Ja. But the lack of interest in them was a bit surprising, I would say. There was a lot of interest in Ja Morant this time around, but outside of those guys, not too many people anticipating on basketball or getting as excited for it as I would expect, especially in a very basketball-heavy market. So definitely a different change of pace considering the location. Let's wrap it up, shall we? This video has gone on long enough. I always tell you something I liked, something I didn't like, and something I liked to end the show. Let me tell you something that I liked is there were a lot of dealers who were striking up conversations with me when I was coming up to the table. And typically when I'm set up at a show, what I will do is if someone is approaching me for the first time, I will ask them how they're doing. And I will tell them, let me know if I can help you with anything. I don't really ask them what they're looking for because a lot of times they're just browsing is the answer I'm going to get. So it doesn't really go anywhere. I find that if someone's looking for something in particular, they usually will tell me, and then I can point them in that direction. But I kind of let them do their thing. And if I really feel like they've been standing around for a while and there's something that they're interested in, then I will try to initiate a conversation. And that is how I see a lot of dealers do it, or at least that's how they handle me when I'm the one who's walking around. That was not the case. People were very chatty at this show. I don't know if it was because it was a little bit slower, if people were trying to make deals, but there was a lot of really good conversation. And that's why my little report there of why I was able to be so detailed with how the show was going and what people were talking about and what people were interested in is just because I was able to have those conversations, which is cool. I do like to get that pulse because even if I don't make a deal, having that knowledge is very valuable to me to understand what current trends are in the hobby and to just take notes of what people are interested in and what people aren't interested in. So that was something I liked. Something I didn't like. There was this gentleman on day one where I had made it around halfway around the show floor. So basically it's like it's a giant square, the way that the venue is set up. So I was about halfway around, kind of doing my first loop. And there was this guy who started talking smack while I was standing right there. And it was one of the most bizarre things I think has happened to me, certainly in the top 5, where he was ragging about the guys with the Pelican cases and talking about how they just want to trade or they just want to sell. And, maybe some of those criticisms are fair. There's certainly a stereotype. And yeah, it does happen a lot. So I can see why that stereotype forms. But this guy was saying this while I was standing there, and I kind of looked over at him, and he was looking directly at me while he was talking smack to another dealer. And it was clearly, it felt like it was targeted towards me or something. I was just standing there thumbing through a value box and looking in a showcase at some raw vintage, and this guy just starts going off. And after he left, the dealer said, "I've never met that guy before in my life." And he just acted like he knew me or something. It sounded like he was a dealer, but I never saw that guy set up anywhere. I think he was just there to walk around. But I thought it was very interesting. Look, I get it that there is a lot of that goes on, and there's a reason that stereotype is out there. But I'm just there minding my own business, and this guy is judging me solely because of the fact that I have a little case in my hand that I carry my cards around in, either that I brought with me just in case I need them, or to carry around the cards so that I don't have to put them in my backpack where it hurts my back at the end of the day, toting around all the cards that I picked up. I like to carry them instead rather than put it all on my back. So, I mean, one of us is just sitting here minding his own business, being, just doing their own thing, and then the other guy is out here antagonizing us. Which of us is more evil, I guess, in the hobby, if you want to put it that way. Just ridiculous, but I thought it was funny in hindsight. But I was kind of at first like looking at him like, I'm not really saying anything to you, dude. I'm not impeding any of your deals or anything. I don't know what the problem here is, but something seemed to have set him off. So hopefully he had a better day after that. But anyways, one thing I liked to go ahead and wrap up, wrap up the show is that there was a lot more people coping with the fact that they're not going to get top dollar for their cards. I know, gasp. But this was the first time really since the peak in spring of 2021 where I felt like people were the most willing they ever have been to take a loss and move on from things. From a dealer's side. Now, from the people approaching the dealers, I got the opposite impression where people were trying to get top dollar for this stuff. And that's pretty typical. That was pretty typical even before the pandemic. But the dealers were more motivated than they had been in a long time to make deals. I had some dealers who were very assertive of trying to make deals with me and trying to make sure they could get something done, talking themselves down before I even made an offer on a card from their sticker price, sometimes as much as 30% immediately. And I've seen it sometimes, but this was definitely a lot different. It was happening pretty often. So interesting to see. Something I wouldn't mind going forward. Just means more opportunities for me as a buyer. But yeah, that was interesting to say the least. It's something I did like because, hey, it allows me to get more deals done. So that is it for me today, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you, especially if you spent all 37 minutes with me. I will be back with a podcast episode on Tuesday. Also, I'm going to be, if you're watching this on Sunday when it's released, I'm going to be joining Big Scott 35 for Let's Talk tonight. Or if you're catching this later on, you can go check out the archive of that. I'm not sure what we're talking about yet, but it should be a good time. I always enjoy it. Shooting the bull with Scott and just discussing the hobby. What's better than talking about the hobby with your friends, right? So that is it for me. Take care. Stay safe. Be kind.